Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us here for episode 7, season 1 of the Stand-Off, your rugby league show, brought to you here on New Zealand Sport Radio. As always, here on a Wednesday evening, I'm joined by my fellow colleague and long-time league enthusiast, Brad Enger. Good evening, Brad.
Good evening, Sanjay, and good evening to all the listeners. We had some great games in round 9 and some interesting talking points that I think we can discuss tonight. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it certainly was a very, very solid round of rugby league. Some blowouts and some really close games and some low-scoring encounters as well. So we'll cover all of those off. Like I said, we're here on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. live on Facebook, and you can always catch us on our podcast, Brad.
That's right, at iHeartRadio. Just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio. And as always, we're going to cover everything you need to know in the week of rugby league, which is including the top stories of the week, a wrap-up of round 9, a preview of round 10, and news on rugby league from around the world, including the women's game. So tune in to get your rugby league news.
Right. Now, so tune in, listeners, to the show, and please feel free to ask us a question or two along the way, and we will definitely get to those a little bit later on. So, hey, look, it's time for the top stories of the week, and leading the top stories of the week, just announced a few days ago, was the fact that Dean Pay has resigned as Bulldogs head coach, and there are talks of Trent Barrett coming into the mix. But first of all, let's address the Dean Pay resignation. Brad, what do you make of it, and how is this going to play out for the Bulldogs for the rest of the season?
I think that's going to be the interesting question. He was advised that he was not needed next year, and then he decided just to leave now. And I'm not sure what it's. We've seen some teams fall apart when they lose a coach, and some of them get better. I don't think they're going to get better. I think it's probably the end of the season for them. Not that the season was going to get better for them anyway, but I don't think Trent Barrett's the way to go. I've got friends that are Bulldogs fans that think Dean Pay was a bit hard done by and wasn't given time. I'm not sure. I don't follow him that much to know how much of a chance he had, how much he didn't, but it'll be interesting to see coming up.
Yeah, I guess with Dean Pay, though, he has been there for the last, 2.5 seasons. So I think that, they're playing in a fairly hard and fast competition these days. And, unlike perhaps in the early 90s or even in the early 2000s when coaches may have been given a bit more of a run, it very much is a professional sport. It obviously has been for some time. But what I'm trying to say is that, these days, if the coach is not, providing the results that the team is looking for, then unfortunately they're moved on rather quickly these days. And if they're not moved on, then the pressure of the media, the pressure of the general public, from the members, the fans, supporters, really does have an impact on that decision. And I feel Dean Pay, like if you just watched him in the commentary box, well, not in the commentary box, if you watched him in the stands during the game on the weekend, mate, he was absolutely totally stressed out. It just looked above him, and I feel sorry for him. He is a very proud Bulldog. They have got a lot of time for him. He is definitely one of the key members that are part of that organization. So it was probably a difficult decision for him to sort of walk away. But I guess if you're a Bulldogs fan, I don't know. I'm really mixed up on this one, because I would have thought that if Dean was going to leave, end of the season would have been better, because they're just playing some real terrible football at the moment. And change of coach now, will that mean they'll be able to get up to 8, 10, 12 competition points before the end of the season? What do you think, Brad?
I don't think so. I'd be surprised if they get even one more win this year. I think they were done already. Interesting that he decided to go straight away. Obviously we'll probably never know what was said in their meeting, but to just pick up everything and go was a bit of a shock. I expected him to be out by the end of the year. I just thought he'd see it through, but
Well, that looks like the decision's been made from Dean Pace. So I guess, is there an interim coach, Brad, that you know of, someone that's going to look after the team this weekend, or is
They
there
haven't
someone?
really announced, so I assume it's just the assistant coach, but I don't know who that is. So I
Right.
assume it's just that, and they're focusing on getting someone. Trent Barrett, if he does get it, he is not going to be able to go there till next year.
Right,
He's
we'll keep you
been
updated. I guess we'll keep the listeners updated on that one. So, like, but Bulldogs obviously without Dean Pay going forward, and yeah, the season just going from bad to worse, really. So, unfortunate for them. But in other news, we've got Corey Harawira Naira and Jaden Okenvar contract deregistrations reduced to bans and fines. Brad, can you shed some light on this one?
Yeah, so in the preseason, they got into a bit of strife with some schoolgirls that
Two
saw them.
17-year-old schoolgirls, correct?
That's correct, yeah. And the Bulldogs ripped up the contracts, sent them on their way, and they appealed the decision. And this week, their appeal was successful. So now their contracts have been taped back together, and they're back with the Bulldogs. I've heard rumors that Corey doesn't want to be. Sounds like he's not happy with how the Bulldogs treated him with all this stuff, and he's looking to get out. Even heard the Warriors are interested. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Jaden is happy to be at the Bulldogs. He's just happy to have a job again. So it's been quite a picky subject. There's a big line of people that are against it and people that are for it. I'm not really sure either way. I haven't looked into it enough yet. But what are your thoughts on it?
Well, both of these guys were playing some really, really good rugby league before all of that happened. That's what I do remember. I
Yeah.
do remember the saga with the two 17-year-old schoolgirls. Hey, look, I think the fact that they were 17 and that they were female, things do get thrown out of context a lot in the media. And again, they could be victims of that. I mean, we had Nathan Cleary having some parties during the COVID break. That got thrown out of proportion. He's playing some of the best rugby league that he's ever played. In fact, he's probably playing the best rugby league he has played in his career. And so it certainly wasn't detrimental to his skill set by going away and doing that. I guess if you are in the spotlight, you are in the you are in the eye, of the viewer every week, and basically you do have to behave yourself, at all costs. But yeah, I think that it was a poor look, obviously going around with two younger schoolgirls. I understand that these gentlemen aren't too much older, but regardless of that fact, yeah, it was just probably thrown a little bit out of proportion, and I think that's why the Bulldogs have reneged on those, deregistrations as such. And hey, obviously they're suffering big time, so these two blokes could possibly make a difference to the way that they're playing. So they may have thought, hey, look, we'll get them back in. Like you say, though, the players obviously probably feel a little bit hard done by and probably looking to go elsewhere. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. But Brad, let us know what's going on with the Warriors players at the moment that are planning to return home.
Yeah, so they've confirmed that four players are coming home. That's David Fusatua, Ken Mamalo, Ignatius Parsi, and King Vuniyayawa. They're all decided they're coming home. It was going to be after the Sharks game, but it's been delayed because they can't get flights.
Right.
So it's been delayed till the 27th of July, which means they'll be available for the Roosters game, and it's unfortunate for them that they have to wait another week, but it's good for Warriors fans because you're playing one of the best teams. You want to have your best wingers out there. I agree with their decision. It's a hard thing, but it's not something they've just pulled out at the last minute saying, I want to go home. They stated from the start that they were coming home if their family couldn't go over. Once they found out the families couldn't go over, they've said, okay, we're going. They didn't say we're leaving tomorrow. They gave enough warning. So it's a shame, but I understand their situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do understand the situation. A little bit disappointing from a Warriors fan perspective, I guess, that they are going home. I would have thought that if you've made the commitment to sort of go over there and be there for the couple of months that you are there, you might as well see it out. We don't know the dynamics of each individual player there. Of course, I'm guessing that some of them have young children and obviously partners, and of course even parents and brothers and sisters alike. But I can understand, definitely for those that have younger children, that's very difficult on a young family. So I wish them all the best, and I hope that we can get back to some sort of normality in the not too distant future in terms of this whole COVID fiasco. Obviously, it's taking a turn over there in Australia for the worse, really. We're getting more and more cases. Melbourne's sort of gone into lockdown now for another 6 weeks, or 5 more, I think it is. And of course, now it's looking like Sydney and New South Wales, it's starting to encroach upon those areas, which is it's going to make an impact on not just rugby league but other sports as well. Obviously, we're bringing you rugby league news, so stay tuned in for that one. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, the Warriors also potentially having to relocate again, so that's also some news that that may come to fruition. And in terms, Brad, where were they looking to go if the move was necessary?
I'm not sure. I assume they're going to go to the Sunshine Coast, which is where they were originally, because they were there and using Gold Coast. So I'd assume one of those areas. But
I thought that's I had reports that they were perhaps going to go down to Sydney somewhere, but I could be wrong. We'll keep you updated anyway once we get more news on that, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll cover off the Warriors game against the Titans as well a little bit later on when we cover off round 9. But there's also been some heavy criticism this week in regards to the bunker, Brad.
Yeah, so the bunker, we'll talk about it in a few of the games coming up, but the bunker had a bit of a rough weekend, going on top of a few weekends, really.
We've had quite a few rough ones now.
Yeah, it's almost a joke now. Graham Ellensley is he's out every week saying, yeah, they got this wrong, they got that wrong. He actually came out this week and said, I know they've done bad, but we've only got 3 people that are trained to do it, and they're in there at the moment, so we can't drop anyone, because everyone wants someone dropped. But
they've got the two manly bad calls. That's robbed them basically. This was a poor call, which we'll cover off a little bit later. But I mean, why isn't if Graham Annesley is the head of the judiciary panel or the referees as such, why isn't he in the bunker? I mean, just go and have a seat, mate, and just correct the decision at the time rather than coming out afterwards and saying we got it wrong. Just make a change. Just go and hop in there. I mean, I don't see what's preventing him from. I mean, obviously, hey, look, there could be other circumstances that prevent him from doing that. But, mate, have a weekend away from the family and hop in the bunker, because it looks like the bunker needs you at the moment.
Yeah, it's real bad at the moment. I think Phil Gill probably said it best in the weekend. It was during the Warriors game, but he kept reiterating it throughout the weekend, saying that rugby league's not played in slow motion, and the bunker is looking at everything in slow motion, and you can handpick out anything you want in slow motion, but in real time, it's a completely different story. So I don't know if they need to bring something in where they don't watch it so many times in slow motion or what. I don't know.
I think
they
that's
have
a
to
good
make
point.
changes.
I think it's a good point. I think if they, once they analyze it in slow motion, I think what should happen before the final decision is made, before they say we have a decision, I think they should definitely do the slow-mos and do all of that. But then before they say, we have a decision, one more time at normal speed to just reiterate exactly how it happened. I mean, that forward pass a couple of weeks ago, I think in the Manly game, which, basically cost them the game. And of course the penalty, I think that was the penalty try last week, or not the penalty try, but the push in the back last week, where who spat the dummy and basically gave it to the referee. Those are the calls that we're talking about, where, hey, look, just use a bit of common sense and perhaps play it at normal speed before you make the final decision. Might just give you a bit of insight as to how it happened in real time, and that might just alter the decision making processes. But we'll have to just wait and see what happens with the referees and the bunker. Do you think at all, Brad, that going back down to one referee has had any impact on these decisions?
I don't think so. I think the reffing on a whole has been a little bit better when there's one. I found with 2 refs you're basically playing two different games, judging on their thing. But some of those calls during the weekend that were wrong, the refs made the right call when they sent it up. So the refs are making the right decision. They just don't seem to have the confidence in themselves to just
blow the whistle.
go out, blow the whistle and say, this is the call.
Well, it's disappointing. Well, we'll have to keep you updated on that, ladies and gentlemen. What we'll do at the moment, though, we'll crack into our round 9 wrap-up. And on Thursday night, we had the Cowboys going down to the Roosters in another thumping. So what we are seeing at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, is quite a few games decided by a large margin, and the games that are sort of closer are low-scoring affairs. So there is a real sort of a pattern forming with these new set of rules and so forth. And this game here, Brad, 42-16. The Roosters absolutely outplaying the Cowboys.
Yeah, it was a whitewash. It looked like the Cowboys were doing good at the start. The Roosters looked a bit rusty, but even rusty, they just kept going. And it's hard to see. You got to be a really good team, like we saw with the Storm, to be able to keep up with the Roosters. Otherwise, this is what happens. You get 20, 30 points put on you.
I mean, they were keeping up with them. I mean, it was only 12-6 at the half, so to stay in the battle till halftime. But after that, it was just a whitewash. And unfortunately, for the second week in a row, the Cowboys conceded 42 points. That's 84 points in their last 2 games now that they've conceded, and they're really struggling up there, up in Townsville. And they look separated, to be honest. Paul Green is under a lot of pressure. A lot of people think his time is up. Okay, yes, he has won a championship up there, but there's only so much a coach can do at an organization. And when you get to that stalemate, I guess you sort of have to decide which path to go down. It might be Paul Green's time up there at the Cowboys. Just things like playing Valentine Holmes on the wing after he was injured just to keep him on the pitch. That's just a terrible decision. I mean, he's one of the marquee players of the club. He's an important asset, really, and at all. And I'd be getting him off there as soon as if there was any sign of injury, really. What do you think about it?
Yeah, the moment a player of his talent, you can't really have them on a bad ankle. I'd be making it go, sure. And brutally honest, it's the Roosters. You basically know you're going in and going to lose anyway. So why risk him? Give him the week off, get him back and get him 100% for the next game, which you have a shot of winning. That might be a defeatist attitude way of looking at it, but he's your best asset at the moment. Why?
No, absolutely.
Why risk him?
Yeah, no. Look, like Cowboys, absolutely just all at sea at the moment. Paul Green, we'll have to wait and see what happens to him, and we'll keep you updated on that. But just on the other side of things, Kyle Flanagan and Carey are just they're combining perfectly in that halves combination for the Roosters. And they're looking quite dangerous as well. There's quite a few dangerous combinations going around. We'll talk about Cleary and what's his name, Coruscant, a little bit later on as well. They are absolutely lethal at the moment, and I think that would be one of the matches to look out for is another Panthers Roosters encounter. I think that will just keep the viewers licking their lips because they're both playing some terrific rugby league. Obviously, historic night for Matty Ukuvalu, fringe player, wasn't even destined to be in the side on the weekend, gets a call up and scores 5 tries in a match, first time since 55, and I think the first time for a Rooster as well, Brad.
Yeah, what a story you can tell your grandkids. Basically getting called 10 minutes before the game. It was about 10 minutes before it because it was final warm-up. And not a bad way to have your debut. I think in that moment, you don't really have the nerves, I guess.
I think you'd be a bit more free. You sort of like, it's almost like, dare I say, it's almost like, getting a call up for a cricket game that you're not really wanting to play. You just go out there and swing hell for leather. You just go out there and play the best football you can and see what happens. So, now, look, well done to him. That's quite an impressive performance. I mean, obviously, you saw where those tries were, though. That right side, they just took a hammering. And, they were just having to get the ball out there and someone was going to pick up 4 points. So, that right edge is a big concern for the Cowboys going forward. I think that they're really ruining the fact that they let players like Ponga, Brandon Smith, Billy Kickow go over the last little while. Okay, there were other clubs vying for them with big amounts on the checkbook, but you really needed to hold on to those lads to sort of form a dominant side right now. And unfortunately, the Cowboys are all at sea, and Phil Gilder's it's going to get ugly up there. He's still predicting things to get a little bit worse. So look, great win from the Roosters, but a poor effort from the Cowboys. And Brad, that takes us into Friday night's fixture.
Yeah, and that was the Titans defeating the Warriors 16-12. Titans have ended a 10-game losing streak at their own home ground, which I'm not sure many teams would have a record that bad at home. Warriors came out firing. It was 12-0, 10 minutes in, and it was ready to turn the TV off and go to bed going, this one's over. But the Titans, they've been showing heart, as we've been saying, the last couple of weeks, and they just kept in the fight, wore them down, and then took over. It took them until almost the end of the game. They had an error from Roger that gave them good position. They took advantage of it. What were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, for the Titans, pretty happy for them, really. Like, they had a 40-point scored against them last week. The season sort of came a little bit undone last week after a really good start to the season. And I know that the listeners will be saying, hey, well, hang on a minute, they haven't won much. Yes, but what they've managed to do over there is try and get some consistency and try and get some cohesion. I think they are developing something nicely. We talked about a marquee player possibly going out there next year and joining forces with the Titans. So look, I think that they are forming a club as such. Okay, they might not be getting the results, but they're forming a bond. And under the new coach up there, the things are happening slowly. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. As we all know, the Warriors been in the competition some 25 years and have yet still to win a competition. So it does take time. So I'm really happy for the Titans in that regard. In terms of the Warriors, I'm pretty disappointed, really. It's typical Warriors again, 12 points up, and then to come and lose that game, that's heartbreaking. They shouldn't have lost that game, really. I just felt that, they didn't play the full 80 minutes, and they suffered as a result. It was silly errors that cost them.
Yeah, and I know Todd Payton had an interview during the week and said he spoke to the head of the referees after the game, as if you have concerns, rather than bleating it out and getting fined 10 grand, you talk to them in private. And the head of the referees board advised them that there were 4 big calls in the game that they actually got wrong. One being the lone player's try that the bunker denied. There was a shepherding call on Hiku, and 2 others that I can't remember. One where Wade Egan did a dummy half run to go over the line. The marker was offside, so that should have been a penalty try. Those calls, but in saying that, with 10 minutes to go, they were still ahead. So I know people say it cost them the game, but it didn't, because they were ahead still. They cost themselves.
Rugby league. Yeah, and also that's rugby league. Like, you've got to play to the whistle on the field. I mean, you can moan and bitch about it afterwards as much as you want, but the reality is the call on the night is the call. So you can't put it down to that. Just a frustrating loss, particularly after a decent win against Brisbane. It would have been good to go back-to-back, particularly against a side that, again, is not in that top echelon of teams at the moment. So, yeah, pretty disappointing win. But, hey, look, let's hope that they can come good this weekend. They've got a big game this weekend, so we'll cover that off a little bit later. But yeah, it was their match to win, and they blew it. So disappointing. They're going to be losing 4 key players as well after the Sharks game. So yeah, that's going to be it's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the season goes for us. I mean, I know we talk about the Bulldogs and being dire straits, but hey, man, two more losses on the trot for the Warriors, and we're back where we started with them as well after the first 2 losses in the pre-COVID. Yeah, okay, we got the win against the Dragons, and we've had also, wins against the Sharks and the Broncos, but very little else, Brad. Very little else.
Yeah, it was the Cowboys and the Broncos.
Sorry, Sharks, Cowboys and the Broncos. Sharks is this weekend.
Sharks is this week, yeah. Right. I had a look at the rest of the draw for the Warriors, and I can confidently put 1 win down out of the rest of the games. And that's in 6 weeks' time we play the Bulldogs.
Hey, you never know, mate. The Bulldogs may have had a new coach by then. They may have a few games, a little bit of momentum. That Belmore Sports Ground, their club may, have a lot of supporters there. So, hey,
off us. Come on, we've got to get that one.
no, look, I genuinely believe that there's more than one more victory left in this Warriors side. Look, I don't think they could make the 8, to be honest. I'd like to think that they would. I think that they need to, try for a top 10 finish at least. A little bit of pride and respect, and I guess trying to win at least half the games that they played this season. That would be better than their 25-year history record suggests. Anyway, if you can try and win at least half the games, even that's going to be just very, very tough. Losing those 4 players as well is gonna definitely cause some pains there up the back, particularly on that right and left edge. We're losing 2 big wingers, and with what we've seen in weeks prior to them playing, we've seen what teams do to the Warriors is they camp us down in their own half. Our small back 5 unable to get out. They trap us, they bury us, they play the territory game, and we end up bleeding points. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. But we'll move on to Friday night's fixture. The second of our Friday night games, which was the Rabbitohs versus the Tigers. Now, I had the Tigers down to win this one, Brad, but unfortunately the Rabbits came away with the goods. But a bit of controversy in this one, Bradley.
Yeah, I thought it was a great game. A lot of niggle. It was high intensity and gripping to watch. Obviously, everyone's talking about the Josh Reynolds. Shouldn't laugh. Kicking Campbell Graham in the head when he was going for a loose ball, completely accidental. It was a complete accident, bit reckless. But the biggest call is Latrell. He ran in and gave Reynolds a bit of a slap and tickle, and he didn't get penalised for it. He is now. He's got 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think it was a silly. I have to say that was a silly play. You're a professional sports person. Nothing good was going to come out of that. Yes, I know that's how Latrell, plays the game. He plays with emotion, he plays with pride, and he backs his players and he backs his teammates, and that's great. Those are all quality attributes to have as a rugby league player. But professionalism and keeping your head also need to be 2 other attributes that he should be considering, because the Rabbitohs, they've been a bit of a funny team in the first 9 rounds of the season, and they're one of those fringe teams that could easily not easily make the 8, but they could make the 8 or they could easily miss out on it. And with him being gone for a couple of weeks, that does put a bit of a dent in their side. And I just think that if he had approached a little bit more differently, he could be playing this weekend, but unfortunately he won't be.
Yeah, silly call from him. He's a bit emotional, but before that, it looked good. The first hour they were 18-0 up, and it looked like they were going to run away with it. But Souths just let their foot off the gas, and the Tigers, with a lot of help from Benji, when Benji came in off the bench, he kind of rejigged their attack, and they started to come back. And if that game had been a little bit longer, or they'd started their comeback a little bit sooner, you could have been right on this one.
Yeah, I think that it was a fairly good game. I mean, in terms of the Tigers managing to claw back to 18-10 loss. I think that right side they were completely destroyed, with obviously Dane Gagai getting his first NRL hat trick. I believe that he has scored a hat trick in the NRL. At representative level. I don't know if it's a country origin game or a country city game or even a Queensland game. I know he's scored quite a few tries for Queensland, and I also believe he's scored in the green and gold. So I would have thought that he would have had an NRL hat trick by now, but good on him. His first one. And like I said, the Tigers' right edge was just completely destroyed. Like in terms of Benji, however, look, Michael Maguire has come out and said that it's Benji's job to steer this side around. He's come back and put a little bit of faith back into him. Benji's been working tirelessly on his defence game over the last 6, 7, 8 weeks after he was sort of dropped a few weeks ago. So to have him back, and I think his spark certainly did ignite the team. I think that he needs to have a fantastic end of the season for them to sort of be serious contenders of making the 8, and he really needs to step up and potentially play some really good football, which could see him end his career on a high.
Yeah, and I think he knows that if he's not performing, as soon as Reynolds allowed back, he will be dropped again. So he's got to literally play every game like it's his last. And I think they're a more dangerous team with him out there. So I think the Tigers can get it together and make a decent stab at the top 8 and playoffs.
Yeah, I think even if he was to jump in, into the hooking role with maybe 20 minutes to go, if they're going to alleviate, the number 9 of his services for the rest of the game, then, his presence on the park, I think it is important for a team like the Tigers. And, he's the Kiwis captain at the end of the day. So you can't really have him on your bench. I think that, I reckon a couple of those losses that they suffered between the time that he was dropped and now, his input could have been definitely influential in those games, but hey, that's just hearsay now. So we'll have to keep we'll keep you updated on the Tigers, and we'll move on to the Saturday fixtures. We had the Sharks up against the Panthers, and the Sharks absolutely taken to the cleaners by Cleary's Panthers at 56 points to 24, and Charlie Staines becoming the first Panther player to score 4 tries on debut. Another fantastic performance from a debutant, Brad.
Yeah, so it was kind of the weekend for it. Unfortunately for him and Panthers fans, he's not playing this week because he broke some COVID protocols after such a great game. He had a few mates over to celebrate, and that breaks the rules. So a bit unfortunate for him.
There seems to be a little bit of that as well. I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but yeah, it seems to be like a few. I know a couple of the Eels players were hugging their family members in the crowd, and breaking the COVID rules. So sorry, you were saying about Charlie Staines not being available for this weekend.
It's nothing that serious. Same with that. That was the Eels player was on debut as well. It's just it's still a new thing for some of these young boys that haven't played yet. So a lot of the older boys have known what you got to do day in, day out with this whole COVID protocol. So I think some of the young ones just a bit more education on it, and but yeah, he was excited, so he had a good time. But like you mentioned a bit earlier, Coruscant and Cleary's combination is probably one of the best in the NRL right now.
I would go so far as to say that that's the best combination in the NRL at the moment. I don't know of a better combination. Yes, obviously you've got Keary and Flanagan out at the Roosters playing well together. Obviously Canberra now without Hodgson for the rest of the season. We'll cover that off a little bit later. They're going to be suffering, and it really is. I'm going to put it out there. I reckon if you got your number 7 and your 9, your 6 and your 1 playing hard and up the middle, that is when you get opportunities to spin the ball wide and allow your centers and wingers to really dominate the flow of the game. And that's what the Panthers are so good at. They rip you up the middle. Hey, look, besides Api Coruscant and Nathan Cleary, I mean, getting them forward, James Fisher-Harris, James Tarmow doing the job up front, they are just killing teams at the moment, laying the platform. Coruscant's there, he picks the ball up, he's murdering them up the middle, and then you've got Cleary, who is just basically the playmaker at the back end. So they've got a really good formula over there, and as it stands right now, if we were calling a grand final winner, I'd be saying it would be the Panthers after 9 rounds. Personally, that would be the team that I would pick to win it after 9 rounds.
Yeah, I think they're building every week, and each week they seem to look stronger and stronger. So that's not a bad prediction. And I think talking about all those great players, you didn't even mention Kakao, who's one of the best second rowers out there. So the fact that he's so far down and talking about how good this team is shows how good this team is at the moment. Because if he was in any other team, he'd be one of the first things you talk about. So yeah, it's disappointing for the Sharks to lose by that much. They gave up 10 tries. Their left edge completely dismantled. Hopefully the Warriors were taking notes.
Yes, definitely.
Losing Andrew, they lost Andrew Fafita after I talked about how he'd played his best game in a while last week. Then this round he gets injured. He's out for 1 to 2 weeks, so that's a big loss for the Sharks.
And it was like, I mean, 56 points scored against them as well. I mean, there have been some really big surprises in this season's contest so far because 56 to 24, they haven't been playing that badly recently, the Sharks, and yet they still got that many points scored against them. it just goes to show you that the difference in, a top 4 side versus a top 8 side versus the rest of the competition. I think there's, I reckon the table could be easily split into 3 segments, and that is the top 4, your top 8, and then the rest. And that's, in your previous years, we've generally seen, you've got your 2 or 3 teams at the top, but then you've got a whole bunch of teams basically that could make anywhere between 4 and 8. I think that at the moment, if you have a look outside that top 8, there's only really 1 or 2 teams that are really going to compete with the rest of those teams. So it's an interesting competition this season with the rule changes and whatnot, and it will be interesting to see when we get down to the nail-biting stages of the season to see what happens, really.
Definitely, and that leads us to the second game on Saturday, which was the Broncos defeating the Bulldogs 26-8. So the losing streak's finally over. What were your thoughts on the game?
Well, the losing streak is finally over, and I'm happy for the Brisbane Broncos. Obviously, a few disappointing factors for them as well. Alex Glenn suffers a high-grade MCL injury, we could miss up to 8 weeks after that victory. They were singing their song in the changing rooms, which has been a long time coming. The faithful was still out there to support them, though. They still had a few, people in the crowd. So look, the Brisbane Broncos, they're not going to go away. They're one of the key clubs of this NRL competition. So you're happy for them to see a victory. I mean, hey, look, albeit against an absolutely depleted and woeful Bulldogs, it's their worst record now for the Bulldogs after 9 rounds at the start of any competition in any rugby league competition held in Australia since 1908, and it's their worst performance in 1964. In saying that, so yeah, for Brisbane, Haas and Pangai really fired. I think that those two have been playing really well, and for once, Haas can be, pretty happy that he's on the winning end of, on the winning side of it rather than on the losing side, because we've seen in weeks gone by, he's always been at the behind the goal line, revving his team up, having a word to say. He's a young fella, but he's got a lot of respect amongst the team already, and he's going to be an exciting prospect. He'll be in that Origin bench, I'd say.
Yeah, he would. And I know during the week, the Broncos players actually stepped up and took over basically from Anthony Seibold for the week for training sessions. He took a back seat, allowed the senior players to kind of lead it. Some people didn't like it, saying like he lost the locker room, but it was kind of like a team building exercise. The team are struggling. They got in there, and I think it showed in the game, merely against the Bulldogs, yes, but they looked happy. And when they were happy, they were a lot more of a attacking flair like team that we used to see, rather than the hopeless, clueless looking team we've seen the last couple of weeks. They were trying things, it was working, and the confidence boost could be what they need to get through the rest of the season. Will they make the 8? I don't think they will, but they won't be losing every week. I think they're going to be a lot more competitive, which I guess is all fans really ask for right now.
Yeah, I think those, going out and playing golf this week and getting their mind off the rugby league saga that has followed them around for the last little while was good. So, hey, look, well done to the Broncos on winning that game and ending the losing streak. Unfortunately for the Bulldogs losing Dean Pay, their troubles go from bad to worse, and we'll just have to see what happens with them. But following that game on Saturday, we had the Raiders up against the Storm. The Storm taking this one out 20 points to 14, a fairly close game if you look at it on the scoreline. But if you actually watch the game, I think you would agree that pretty much the Storm had this one over the Raiders. And there are some alarm signs, unfortunately, for the Raiders with 2 serious injuries, 2 season-ending injuries. One to their captain, of course, Josh Hodgson, and winger Bailey Simonson, dislocated shoulder. So, they're going to be out for at least the rest of this season. And, of course, still no John Bateman, Corey Horsburgh, Emre Gula, Sia Soliola, who are still all out injured. So this is probably the worst injury spike that Ricky has encountered in his coaching career. And he has gone so far as to say it's the worst injury spike he's ever seen. So, yeah, life will be hard for the Raiders, and it will be definitely difficult for them to even win the competition this year, particularly after having high hopes of getting to the final series this year after being grand finalists. You would have thought that they would be thereabouts, but unfortunately, it's starting to fall apart for them due to these injuries, Brad.
Yeah, I think the injuries they already had that you've mentioned was making it hard, but losing Hodgson's like the killer blow.
He's been one of the best players this season. He's playing some extraordinary football. So yeah, definitely a big blow.
So without him, I think it's going to be very hard for them. I had them picked to be, if not winning it, be in the grand final again. And yeah, I don't see that happening, unfortunately for them. But maybe that's going to help them for next year when they get everyone back, get it back into the swing of things and start again.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Unfortunately, it's just a week-by-week situation for the Raiders at the moment. I think that one thing that was really awesome to see in the game was probably the play of the round and probably the play of the season potentially as well. That Ryan Pappenhausen 100-meter try was something special, and it was the difference. It turned out to be the key play in the game, and it turned out to be the difference between the two sides at the end of it. So, yeah, did you like that one there, Brad?
I did. It's great seeing all this young talent the Storm seem to find, but he's got big shoes to fill in Melbourne. After that guy there, I think his name was Slater. He played a little bit.
Yeah,
but
he's doing all right. He's doing a good job.
Yeah, he's filling it well, and yeah, great play. Kind of sucked all the momentum out of the Raiders there. They were a bit hard done by the Raiders with the bunker that we've already talked about. Simonson got a sin bin early on. Shouldn't have been a sin bin. The Graham Ellersly's come out and said now. Addo-Carr scored minutes after that sin binning down that edge where he would have been. Again, I feel like it's a Warriors situation again. It didn't cost the Raiders the game, but it's I suppose it takes a bit of a hit mentally.
It was a bunker blunder, and Ellersly coming out and saying we got it wrong again. Terrible. But hey, look, Ricky wasn't making any excuses for that at the end of the game. He normally does blow a gasket, that fella, but he was pretty well contained. I think he's just overwhelmed by the absolute huge amount of injuries that they've got. So. Yeah, we'll just have to keep our eyes on the Raiders. But that leads us into the other Sunday's fixture, And on Sunday, we had the Knights against the Eels, which was obviously top of the table. Eels taking this one out, 6 in a row now, 10 points to 4 against Newcastle, Brad.
Yeah, I think basically you could put it down to Clint Gutherson was the difference in this match. It was a battle. And it's what the Eels needed if they want to go all the way. They need some battles, get in the grind, get dirty, and come out the other side a winner. So I think it's going to help them in the long run. Knights, they got a lot of injuries and concerns. They're still got the goods though, so they'll be confident in this. They only lost by 6 against one of the best teams in the comp, so they'll take some confidence out of it.
Yeah, I just think how they're using some of their resources at the moment at the Knights, I think, is where they're going wrong. Obviously, Pearce is playing with a bit of an injury there. His knee is heavily strapped, and Ponga also, he had 5 head knocks. Their key weapon, I guess you could say, out the back. Teams are really targeting him, and he had like 5 head knocks since the COVID break. 2 in the game on the weekend, and he's standing too deep there. I feel at second receiver, and that's where Pearce is not taking the game up the middle enough. I think that he's got to get in more near that 5'8" position rather than stand out there almost on the flank. And I think he's got to get himself a little bit more involved a little bit earlier and take a little bit of the pressure off Mitchell Pearce. So it'll be interesting to see, what their strategy is after a few sort of, mediocre performances. I think they came back last week and had a victory, but they lost the week before that when they went north to the Cowboys. So, we'll just have to wait and see. But I think, if you have a look at, the fullbacks in the competition that are really, creating havoc, Tedesco, Gutherson, these guys are really playing at the line. And I think that, Kalen is just getting found out at the moment. And he's got to change something because he's a great player. He's explosive. He's lightning quick, and we want to see the best of him. But at the moment, they're just not allowing the ball to get to him fast enough and in that elusive space for him to make the play.
Yeah, he needs to just change his tack. But he's young, he will. I'm sure it's just a process. That leads us to the final game of the round. Bit of an upset for me, not exactly the result, but the scoreline. And that was the Dragons defeating the Sea Eagles 34-4. Yeah, I had a feeling. I had a feeling the Dragons might get it. I didn't pick it, but yeah, I didn't expect them to win by 30. Yeah, look, the Dragons have got their shit together, really. McGregor had the pressure on him. He made the changes he needed to make. The players have responded, and they are a better team than they've been all year.
Well, yeah, I mean, you talk about those changes. I mean, Ben Hunt playing in the hooking position, he's played there for Queensland, and it's not his desired position, but he's playing some really good football there. So I think that's a fantastic move. Him and Dufty are just been playing out of their skin. I mean, Ben Hunt was superb at dummy half, and Dufty at fullback, great. Zach Lomax and looking dangerous on that right edge, also very, very good on the weekend. Look, for Manly, it's 3 straight losses, first time since 2018 that's happened, and they just look all at sea, unfortunately, with the injuries that they've got. Tom Trbojevic, Fanua Blake, Dylan Walker, they're not far away, but they've only won 5 out of 17 games. It's an interesting stat, actually, 5 out of 17 without Tom Trbojevic there over the last 18 months. Now, that's less than 30%, as opposed to when he is there, they win 83% of the time. So depth at on the northern beaches is a major concern, and lack of spark out of dummy half is another. So we've talked about that dummy half area. It's a crucial part of the game these days. It is where teams are taking advantage of the new laws and the new rules. So yeah, Manly just they're struggling at the moment, and it'll be interesting to see what happens when they do get some of their players back. But I'd be marking them down as potentially near the bottom of the ladder over the next coming weeks before they get some of their key players back.
Yeah, I think they're in for a rough time, unfortunately for their fans. But that brings us to the end of the round. So if you're there, Paul, are you able to bring up the ladder?
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we've had a few technical difficulties today with Paul, but he has managed to scrape through, and there it is. There's the ladder. So you can see there, basically at the top of the ladder, we've got the Eels, who are continuing to, just play some amazing football, followed by the Panthers, Storm, Roosters, Knights, Rabbitohs, Raiders, and the West Tigers that make up the 8. So obviously the Sea Eagles and the Sharks are dropping out of the 8. So we've got Sharks, Sea Eagles, Dragons, Cowboys, Warriors, Broncos, Titans, and the Bulldogs making up the rest of the competition. Brad, I just want to ask you something. Which teams do you see that definitely have no chance of making the 8?
Definitely not making the 8. I would have the Bulldogs, the Titans, Cowboys, Warriors.
So you still harboring thoughts that the Broncos can beat the likes of the Dragons, the Sea Eagles, and the Sharks to get up there and potentially snatch a top 8 spot?
I'm on the fence with them. I don't think they will, but their draw isn't too bad, and if they can continue how they played in the last round, they could surprise some teams and squeak up there.
I'm looking forward to watching these Dragons play over the next couple of weeks, because what a turnaround they've had. McGregor was almost on ice. He was literally on ice earlier on in the season, and people were calling for his head. And he's done a fantastic job to turn it around. But I mean, they're playing some good football. Okay, they beat a depleted Manly side, but it'll be interesting to see, in the next coming weeks how they go. And in saying that, we'll have a look at the round 9 picks that we had, and we'll then have a quick look at round 10.
Yeah, so I got 6 out of 8, and you got 5 out of 8. The difference was the Tigers Rabbitohs game.
Yeah, I gave you that one. I mean, I did take a bit of a punt on the old Tigers there, but hey, look, I genuinely thought they could come away with the points. So yeah, no, it leaves me at 32 out of 48 compared to your 33 out of 48. So we're one game apart.
We're still still neck and neck.
Still pretty much neck and neck. And Paul, do we have any questions from the viewers at this stage? For listeners? No.
He's not there. I can see.
I think you've kind of gone through them basically around about will all the teams move to Queensland to avoid the COVID outbreak in New South Wales? What do you think's the likely situation as to where the rest of the game is going to be played?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It really does. It's really dependent on how badly things are getting in New South Wales, I suppose. Obviously, Melbourne's locked out now. I guess the next major state sort of looking at doing something similar is New South Wales. So, yeah, if it does get any worse, dare I say, we could be, seeing a lot of places go into lockdown and a whole review of the competition, really. So it's an unknown at the moment, to be fair.
Yeah, I think Sydney just had a recent cluster, which has caused everyone to be a bit worried. So if that cluster does seem to build, I think they're going to have to move it. They should just throw them all on a plane, send them over here.
Well, exactly.
I can get to watch some live league again, and we're a bit safer. That won't happen, but yeah, I think Queensland is a high possibility because they won't want to cut off the season again. So I think they're going to, as soon as it looks like it's bad, I think they'll ship everybody over.
Yeah. No, I think that's the right thing to do. I
know that some mixed messages to the young guys.
Yeah, I think the young guys, I think they are getting a bit confused. They see the crowds back at the stadiums and they think it's okay. So yeah, I think it's more it's a bit more of an education from the clubs and the NRL to the young boys about what you can and can't do. Because yeah, if you see crowds there, you kind of feel like it's back to normal, and mistakes happen.
Yeah, mistakes happen, but I mean, these guys are professionals. They've been told that they're not allowed to do that. That's just almost ignorance. I'm sorry on behalf of some of those lads. I mean, come on, mate. The whole world knows what's been happening, and to be able to go out, I mean, would you be going around hugging public members of the general public on the sideline right now? I don't think so. So they really do need to sit down with them and tell them one more time, hey, look, this is not acceptable, and that's it. And then potentially have some sanctions against them if they repeat offenders, to be fair.
Yeah.
Now, I must say, the kid who scored a hat trick and then had a few people over. Now, he had his parents, his brother, sister-in-law, and a couple of family friends. So he had 10 people over. You're allowed 10 people in a day, but only in 2 groups of 5.
Yeah.
So he had 10 in one group of 10 rather than 2 groups of 5. I think, I can see how he got mixed up in that one.
Yeah.
And I think it was a little bit harsh on him because it was parents. It wasn't like he was having like some sort of mass orgy or something going on. He had his mum and dad round because he just scored a hat trick with his brother and a couple. So I think he was a little hard done by. But I think the rest of them, you're right. Look, they're professionals. They should have been told by now. They should know what's going on. But yeah, and that's it from the chat room, guys.
Awesome. Cheers for that, Paul.
Cheers for that, Paul, mate. We'll crack into round 10, ladies and gentlemen. And on Thursday night, we've got the Roosters paying $1.23 versus the Raiders at $4.20 all of a sudden, looking like they're on the outer and outer as the season is going along with these injuries. And yep, I see the Roosters taking this one comfortably.
Yeah, same here. I think too good and Raiders too many injuries.
I see rugby league being come back to the FCG as well. I think for the first time this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that will be that'll be nice to see on Thursday night. Friday night we've got the Storm against the Titans. I don't think there's too many surprises here. $7 playing $8.50. I've got the Storm comfortable victors in this one. But it'll be interesting to see if the Titans can hold them to a reasonable score. That would be the challenge, I think, from the Titans. Obviously, you go out there to win. But if they start losing, then if they can hold them to a reasonable score and play some solid defense, keep Melbourne out, that will show the true character of this Titans side.
Yeah, it'd be good to see them fight, but Storm coming away with the win there. And then the second game on Friday is the Tigers paying $1.52 against the Broncos paying $1.55. So it's quite close there. I'm going with the Tigers. I think the Broncos showed some good spirit, but I think the Tigers are still the better team.
Yeah, I think that the Broncos, obviously, just after that one win, there's not too much to ride home about just yet. I think that you'd have to be a very, 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 very strong guy to go and put your house on the Broncos. But just a correction on those odds. It's actually 255 for the Broncos there, Brad. Sorry, that was my mistake. So 255 for the Broncos and $1.52 for the Tigers. So yeah, look, I'm backing in the Tigers for this one. I think down at Leichhardt, the Broncos going down there. Yeah, they had the win against the Dogs, but Benji back, and yeah, just the way that I think that the Tigers have been playing lately, in comparison to the Broncos, both not overly fantastic sides at the moment, but I still see them coming away with the points.
Yeah, and then on Saturday, the first game of the day is the Dragons paying $1.30 against the Bulldogs $3.50. Was meant to be a bottom dweller game, but I think the Dragons are showing some great improvement, and they'll come away with the win here.
Yeah, I think so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Bulldogs only win this season. Is it against the Dragons back in round 3 or 4? I think I'd have to go back into the records to have a look at that, but I believe that they've met this season. I know that, and I was just thinking.
I think it was.
I think that the Dragons, the upset from the Dogs, this is when the Dragons are really in that poor slump of form earlier on. So looking forward to the Dragons piling on some points. To be honest, they're playing some good football. Looking forward to seeing more of Dufty and Hunt ripping up the Bulldogs, who are already at dire straits. So no surprise in that one. Rabbitohs versus Knights on the Saturday as well. This is a tight one. $1.85 plays $1.95. Who are you picking for this one, Brad?
Yes, I'm going with the Knights. Knights have been a bit rusty, but I think the Rabbitohs without Latrell are a little bit easier to beat. It's going to be tight, but yeah, I'm going with the Knights.
Yeah, I think I'll stick with the Rabbitohs on this one. I know Latrell won't be there, but I think that they're playing some good football at the moment. They had a good win against the Tigers. And I think that they can, beat this Knights side, even though they've been playing some good football in previous weeks. The Knights have sort of just dropped the ball over the last 3-4 weeks, and that lack of urgent attack, I think, is going to, play against them. So yeah, I'll go for the Bunnies on this one. That leads us into Sunday's fixtures. We've got the Sea Eagles versus the Eels. Top of the table Eels, obviously surprised that they're only paying $1.28 to beat the Sea Eagles. I thought it would have been a hell of a lot more than that. Comparing the Melbourne odds against the Titans at $1.07. So yeah, I've got the Eels taking up this one, Brad.
Yes, I've got the Eels as well. Too good, and the Seagulls got too many injuries.
Sunday's other fixtures are the Warriors versus the Sharks and the Panthers versus the Cowboys. We'll start with the Warriors and the Sharks. Warriors paying $2.85, odds on to lose this one against Johnson's Sharks. I'm backing the Warriors to come back and win this one. Last game for the Mamalos, the Fosituas, King, and of course Ignatius Parsi before they fly back. So I reckon they'll have a solid performance, and they've got one more win before they hit the plane. I think that's the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I'm going the other way. I want the Warriors to win, but I think the Sharks look the better team, and I think they'll be a bit hurt from their performance last week, so they'll be out to make a statement, unfortunately.
Yep, and then of course we've got the Panthers, the Cowboys. Looks like it's going to be another high-scoring encounter. Panthers, I wouldn't be surprised if the Cowboys can't hold out another 42 points and go back to back to back. That will be the challenge for them. The Panthers paying $1.14 to the Cowboys $5.75, Brad.
Yeah, I think it's Panthers, easy win.
So that wraps up our round 10 picks. We've got a couple of different games in the mix there. We've got Brad going for the Knights over the Rabbitohs. I'm picking the Rabbitohs for that one. Earlier in the round, we've got pretty much the same picks, and then we've got the Warriors and the Sharks, which is the other difference of opinion that Brad and I have. So look, we'll got a bit of news update from the overseas competitions, namely the Super League, less than 3 weeks away from relaunch. Fixtures to be announced next week. And there's no news on the women's game as of yet, Brad.
Yeah, so we should have a bit more news on the actual fixtures once they've announced them next week for the show next week, which will be good. But yeah, that's really it for the news from across the pond.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here on New Zealand Sport Radio. This is the Standoff with Sanj and Brad, and we hope that you can tune into our podcast if you missed our show live here on Facebook on Wednesdays at 8. Brad, and that podcast again, how do the listeners get to that?
So go to iHeartRadio or Facebook and just remember to search for New Zealand Sport Radio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you.